Welcome back to Greels Reels, everybody. I'm super excited for today's guest. We have uOttawa GG's women's volleyball player, Tristan Peterson. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
It definitely, I think, fourth time's the charm to finally get down and chat. But I mean, you've been working in the front line during a pandemic in the restaurant scene. So I mean, before we get into volleyball, I mean, how's that been?
It's been good. It's been a little crazy. It's like a different world we're living in. Lots of new regulations but it's nice. It's nice to finally interact with people, be social, get to see people out having fun. It was a long 3 months, so I love it. It's been super energizing for me to like get to interact with people and see people having fun finally.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, it definitely is nice. I mean, I've been, I think through this podcast is one way that I've been interacting with a lot of people, a lot of friends and stuff like that. So it's always nice to have that conversation and just chat with some people. I mean, for me, a lot of my, I guess, hometown friends from like Newfoundland, like some of them are working in Alberta and stuff like that. So like not everybody's like as readily available. So it is definitely nice when you get to be out and have that social interaction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, volleyball. I mean, let's just kind of start right from the get-go. How'd you fall in love with the sport? Where did it all come from?
Oh, well, I started playing when I was like 8, before I was even really able to, I started playing when I wasn't able to do much. It was the first sport I've ever really played. I wasn't a really athletic kid. My parents kind of forced me into it because my sister played. I cried going to practice every day. I hated every minute of it. Don't know when it switched, but it was definitely my sister who encouraged it. She played all through high school and in college. So I wanted to be just like her, I guess. So I just got through it. So I started when I was 8, played every year since. I'm from Caledon, so I started there, but then I started to like creep more into Toronto to play for more competitive clubs. Yeah, and then I ended up here in Ottawa, and I love it. So yeah, that's about it. That's how I kind of got started. Mostly my sister for sure,
Yeah,
but
where'd your sister play ball too?
she actually went to Algonquin, so I really just followed in her steps. I was like, I gotta get to Ottawa. I guess that's where I want to be. All my mom's side of the family's here in Ottawa, so kind of just made sense for both of us to come here. But yeah.
Did you do you see any similarities in you and your sister's game? Like, did you even mimic to, I guess, on court style?
I'd actually say that we were very opposite, and like my parents would probably say the same. Um, I remember just watching her thinking like she was amazing and really good at volleyball and stuff, but our demeanors are very different. My sister's pretty laid back, kind of like always chill, and I'm not. I'm a little more like up and overthinking stuff and a little more like high. I don't know how to describe it, but I'd say that we were actually pretty opposite, which is cool, I'd say. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I guess that provides the opportunity too to have two different perspectives when you're. I assume you're probably chatting about gameplay sometimes, and you get to have that comparison.
Yeah. When I started playing and she was still playing, I was like learning the basics. So I'd say like she had such a role in that. And my dad is like a crazy volleyball dad. So, we were like this little family. Even my brother tried volleyball for a year, didn't like it, but it was like a rite of passage. Like everyone had to try it basically. But yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, yeah, I guess you mentioned a little bit there, just playing club ball, and I mean, obviously, there's probably a little bit of high school volleyball as well too. Just take me through the comparison of both of those and what each different opportunity kind of gave to you.
Yeah, so club volleyball from in Ontario at least, and like I'm from the GTA, is more competitive than high school volleyball. Normally, you just play high school because it's fun and you want to represent your school, but club volleyball is where you're on the pathway to being recruited, and it's more intense strength and conditioning and that kind of stuff. I know it's definitely different in other provinces, which is super cool. I learned that when I got to university and started playing with girls that were not from Ontario, and I was like, whoa, like it's very different. So yeah, I started to play more for clubs closer to Toronto. So I played for Pac-Man and Phoenix, which are just two clubs in the GTA. Whereas like my high school experience was more for fun, and I had a blast, and I really liked like playing with girls that were not from the same like I grew up with the same club girls going through every year. And then I liked high school because it was like just a totally breath of fresh air, like different girls from my hometown. Like it was cool. Definitely a cool dynamic. Um, but I'd say like when I got recruited to uOttawa, I was playing for Pac-Man, and like that was the biggest part of that was like that club. Pac-Man helped me with that the most, I'd say. Whereas high school was just fun, and that's just how it was for me at least. And I know it's not like that for everyone, but yeah, yeah.
No, it's interesting because you say that, and obviously, for myself, growing up in like Clarenville, which is a pretty popular volleyball town in Newfoundland, like the thing is like there's no real like club teams, and even like going through high school, club teams only really formed when basically probably like the later years of like grade 11, grade 12, when we needed like one or two extra players to go and travel to like Ontario to play teams like the Pac-Man, right? And I know the guys, I never went on any of these trips, but I know like my grad class always ended up surprising a few teams. And actually, I think they had one year where they had a really good game against Pac-Man and surprised a lot of people. And then people found out they were a high school team, which was even like more of a surprise, because I think we had like, I think there was like 15 or 16 people that tried out for that team. And then obviously you take around like maybe 12 or 14. So I know, like, I think they were throwing in numbers that like Pac-Man just gets an absurd amount of people like trying out, and there's a lot of competition and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's, whenever I competed at like Canadian national championships and I'd play teams from other provinces, I'd hear that. I'd be like, this is a high school team that just like signed up to play club volleyball. And it was like, whoa. Like for me, the girls I played club with, maybe two of them went to the same high school, and everyone else was from like all around the GTA. So it was like really different. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I think one thing I always like to dive into like the advantages and disadvantages in that scenario, and I find like one thing that I don't like my crowd with, because even though I didn't really play volleyball with that group too much, like we still played hockey together and like softball, and like I know like for the most part, like one big advantage that we had was just like we've been playing with each other since we were like 5 years old, right? So the chemistry was definitely there. But then, obviously, like the coaching and the facilities and the education and stuff like that, like, it's still not really a concept here of like in terms of like high school and whatnot. And I don't really know what it's like for high schools across the country, but like film study and even just kind of diving in a little bit more into like the actual breakdowns and like techniques and like going over clips 100 times to really figure out what it is you need to do to correct that.
Yeah. The biggest thing too is like um in the Toronto area with so many club teams, and it's just like the nature of it is that you just go to the best team for you every year. And so there's not a lot of loyalty and there's not a lot of chemistry that you can build, right? Like if you are happy with your team, you'll stay, but there's turnover every year and things change pretty quickly. So, I'd say that was a huge disadvantage. But it was just like because every club was so close and there was a million you could have went to, you were just always looking for the next best thing, which maybe is beneficial for some people. But it was hard to have like one team that moved through, and so chemistry was like always a thing you had to work on. It never came naturally. No. Yeah.
Were you guys doing like a little bit of film study with like Pac-Man, like those club teams? Is it as intense as like I imagine it would be?
We never did a lot of like we would film all of our games, and I think that we would study like ourselves more than opponents. Whereas now in university, yeah, we look at ourselves, but I'd say like watching your opponents is more of the focus. So I'd say that was definitely a switch. We had like access to film from practice and stuff, and we were like supposed to watch on our own just to learn. But it was definitely less of like game planning film study, which is interesting. And I really like game planning. Like I'd rather watch my opponents like over and over again than watch myself. So I like that switch for sure. But yeah, it was more like just to learn because you were still in like developmental stage, right, in high school and club. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess through those stages, when did you realize that university ball was going to be a possibility for you?
Ooh, probably, like grade 8 or grade 9. I always knew as soon as I got over like the crying and hating everything about volleyball, I knew like I loved it. Like I fell in love with it. It just took me a little while. But yeah, so I knew I wanted to, keep playing forever. I always I dreamt people would ask me what I wanted to do, and I was like, I either want to be a lawyer or a professional volleyball player. And that was like my answer for years. So yeah, I'd say like early into high school, I started thinking about maybe going to the States. Like you got to get on that early. So it was an early process for me for sure. Like pretty soon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's one thing that I found is a very common trend. Because even this was probably like I think episode number 3, like really early. But when I had Dana on, like that was something that she mentioned as well. That like you're basically recruiting and like talking to schools like really, really early, and like you're almost like some people are like committing grade 10 and stuff like that, which is crazy because it's a completely different world from a lot of places where like 2 weeks to training camp, some people finally decide, yeah, all right, I'll commit and play with this team.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And for me, like I always had the States as an idea, so that made me even earlier. And I was like, so even when I switched to wanting to stay in Canada, I was like a year early for so many coaches. They were like, "Whoa, we're not even thinking about your year yet." And I was like, but that's also just who I am as a person. Like I wanted to commit and have my spot, like know where I was going. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess you committed and made that spot with the University of Ottawa. What really, I mean, obviously your sister playing in the city. Um, you said you wanted to be a lawyer. You're in political science, so obviously, like University of Ottawa's got a great reputation for that. So I guess besides the obvious, what really stuck out about the GG's program?
Yeah, for me, like I knew I had family here and my sister, but I was still hesitant because I always associated coming to Ottawa with like really long road trips and like visiting my grandparents and stuff. And I was like, is it fun? Like I was like, what are the people like? So for me, like I went through the whole process, but until I visited and met the girls is absolutely like when I changed my mind. And I know like a lot of universities don't emphasize that. You'll meet the coach and, they'll give you all the details, but the girls, like the current athletes aren't as available to like talk to you. And that's one thing like I really enjoyed about like Lionel and how he organized my recruiting trip is like I met the girls and I was like, these are my people. I was like just socially and just like personality wise. Um, that was the biggest thing. And then just choosing it because of Lionel and like the coaching was also huge. And then like pairing it with just being comfortable with the city and, that kind of stuff. But I'd say honestly, the people, like the girls on the team, like loved, like absolutely like fell in love with them immediately. And I was like, yeah, like no matter what everything else is, like I know these are the people that I would want to be with, like, and build that connection with. So that was huge for me. And it's one thing I always like encourage when I'm talking to younger players. I'm like, push to meet the team. Like even though they'll be graduating, like push to meet the team that's like 1 and 2 years older than you, the girls. Because that was what was important to me. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, it definitely seems to be a common trend from just hearing what uOttawa volleyball players have to say. Like they're always just like, man, like at the end of the day, like I just love the team. I love the girls. I love the atmosphere. So it's definitely apparent that is a trend within the program.
Yeah.
So when you finally end up on campus and you're going through your first year, what's that like? Any major modifications where you kind of maybe realize that, okay, this is a little bit tougher than high school, and how you got through it all?
Yeah. Well, I like I said, like I wasn't super athletic before starting volleyball. Like so when I got to university, I was volleyball trained, but working out in the gym was like a whole new world for me. Like I was able to get through club volleyball with just like learning how to play volleyball. And I was really technical and I would watch video, but the strength and conditioning side of it was like not my strong suit. So that was a huge adjustment. Um, and it was like one of those areas of like extreme discomfort for me to like work out and like focus on weaknesses. So that was number one because of how much they obviously university ball focuses on that. And it's like a cliche, but the way university sport works is like you're everyone in your team is the best from the team that they just came from, right? And so all of a sudden the competitiveness goes up like crazy, and you're sitting on the bench when you've never sat on the bench before, or you're not playing as much as you normally do, and you're a rookie versus like just coming from a club team where you were like you'd been there forever. So you know those struggles I definitely felt like anyone else would. But I'd say like learning how to be like that supporting player rather than on the court, like in your first year, and like learning and accepting that my whole first year was developmental, even though I thought I had just done all my developing and like I was at university now and I was finally ready, but I wasn't because it was like a whole new world. Was probably the biggest adjustment for me. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, a lot of people preach that, right? And you look at all these like championship teams and stuff like that. It's very much when you look into the nitty gritty, it's a group of people who like everybody just accepted their role and really did their role to the best of their ability.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it was just like, it was weird. It was definitely weird. But once you get through your first year, you're like, I just put in work for a year and now I'm ready. You know, that's
Mhm.
how I saw it.
Yeah, so I guess once that really it came to, and you started seeing the court a little bit more, how did that transition work, and what was the excitements? I guess first thoughts there.
Well, it was cool because when I did play in second year, I switched positions. Like I went from being a left side for most of my club career and technically in first year too. And then in second year, I was starting right side all year. And that's like a philosophy that my coach has, like the wing players are very versatile. So I was expecting it in a way, like I was ready for it, but right side is something I've never played before. And it was like another learning curve. Like I was like, okay, I thought I knew left side. I thought I knew my stuff. And then I was like, whoa, right side. But that was exciting for me because I actually like fell in love with the position, and now I'm like possibly moving back to left side. I'm like, I really like right side though. So I don't know, maybe I'll switch around. But that was the biggest thing. And another thing, like the mental toll of being like on the court was a huge switch because I got kind of comfortable being like off the court and learning and being like, oh, you're a rookie, I'm learning, you can make rookie mistakes, and then all of a sudden like you're not anymore. You're only second year, but you're not a rookie and you're starting. And so all adjustments every year for sure. But it was exciting to finally get to like contribute. Yeah, I don't know.
And I guess for the people who don't really understand the sport so much, and where from the outside looking in, it's just like, okay, well, like you're doing the exact same thing from the left side to the right side of the court. Obviously, it's much more than that. How would you, I guess, describe the differences in positions?
Yeah, so and I'm not like a crazy volleyball expert, but left side for me is like typically it's like you're right-handed when you play left side, and honestly like left-handed people excel in right side, just the way the angles work. So being a right-handed person on right side was like already like an adjustment to make because the angles are a lot harder. Left side I'd say is a lot more all around, so you got to be in everything. You got to pass, you got to play defense, you're blocking the other team's right side, which is usually a big player. But right side is like a little more of like a come in, hit a ball, and then you kind of hide in the backcourt a little more. You maybe don't pass that much. You're playing defense in one, which is like a little further off. You're not as like right in the middle of everything as left side is, I'd say. Um, so it's going to be an adjustment for me to go back to left side because I got kind of used to being like, all right, come in, hit a ball, and then see you guys later. Like so, it's definitely different, but I see the angles are the biggest thing. So like my shoulder was always hurting because I had to do like the way you hit when you're right-handed on right side is just like a little more awkward for sure. But yeah.
No, it's interesting. It definitely makes a lot of mistakes. I find in terms of the right side and defensively, you're almost there for like the little like cheeky shots, like just to kind of like cover for those like fakes, and like when people just decide to go up and tip as opposed to cream the ball down the line. It was interesting actually when I was like one of my last years playing like volleyball competitively. Our coach wanted to implement this system where it was essentially your setter was constantly front row, or sorry, you constantly had a um, a right side attack. So
Mhm.
the both setters split as right sides as well. I
Okay.
think that was definitely a little bit more complex for like grade 9, grade 10. But I found myself in that role and just like being a lefty right side. Like, I mean, I didn't have hops. I couldn't really jump, but it was definitely a struggle. But no, it was honestly just a fascinating concept, and you don't see it a whole lot. I'm curious why, I guess, in the pro game, but I mean, it didn't really work for us. I feel like you almost need like two people who are really versatile in both those like setting and just like power hitting kind of mentalities, which is a little bit harder to find almost.
Yeah, I'd say, I don't think I've ever played for a team that does that. So like that's an interesting like I've always had a setter who's a setter and then a right side and like we will lose the right side attack when the setter's in front row like but I think especially in university ball it helps to have someone your setter needs to be so like educated and understanding of the game and has to be the quarterback. So if they're half the game focusing on attacking and half focusing on setting, and then you kind of have like half of each person, like it might be like the perfect combination, but it also might cause you some to like not be as good as you could be. So I think that's maybe where the mentality is for us. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I just always found it an interesting concept because I swear, like, since I've been like working in sports and like even like being around volleyball, that's the one and only time I've ever seen it done. And it was like a grade 9B team that decided to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think the one tournament it worked really well. We got silver, and I think that was basically it. But and it was like a tier 2 silver, so it wasn't even really worth talking about too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so of recent, unfortunately, you had to sit out for most of your third season there and rehab some injuries. Yeah, I mean, for a lot of athletes, there's a lot that you can learn from that, from your experience. So if you could talk a little bit on that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I, had my first year and then I played in my second year and then summer before my third year, my hip just started to really hurt all the time. And I was like thinking it was nothing for a really long time and then got an MRI in like September, I think, of my third year. And they were like, yeah, you need surgery. And that was like crazy news for me because I was like, whoa, like you see all these athletes get surgery and stuff and you just never think that you're gonna have that big of an issue. And it literally just started one day when I was walking. So but I'd say like absolutely the hardest thing I've ever had to do was sit out for a year and learn how to like feel a part of the team without like contributing the way I felt in any way. Like I felt like I was doing nothing, even though, I was coaching and mentoring younger players and watching more film than I've ever watched in my whole life because I wasn't focusing on going to use it. I was just watching it and watching it. But absolutely like the mental toll of one, like not being able to walk for a little while and trying to like feel a part of a team that for me stats and numbers and like how much I contribute, and I tell this to everyone, like my plus minus in a game is really important. Like I will think about where I'm at like during the game in terms of like plus minus and I'll be like, okay, but if I did this wrong, then I need to make up for it here. And that's just the way my brain works. So when I wasn't doing any of that, I was like, I'm useless. And it was really hard. But I learned how to like focus on other players more than myself because I was so in my own head about, okay, like I just need to make sure I'm doing the best that I can and contributing the best way that I can. And then I wasn't focusing on like how I could bring other people up. And if there was something to be done on the court, like we realized a weakness on the other team, I'd be like, okay, well, I'll just do it. Like I was like, and I would get in my own head and I'd put way too much on my own shoulders. And then when I was off the court, I was like, I could see that weakness and I like could tell someone else to do it. And I couldn't in any way do it myself. And so that was huge for me because it was something I noticed in my second year when I was playing is that I just tried to do everything because I wanted to be like, I was like, well, I might as well just do it. And I would put that weight on myself and then I would be extra frustrated when I didn't. So one of the hardest things in my life, but honestly, like coming into this year when I'm finally going to play, like I'm so glad that it happened and that I was able to learn how to do that. Cause I don't think I would have been able to if I was playing, how to like focus on others around me.
Mhm. And it's interesting you say that because I mean a lot of athletes, especially like you see it all the time in like the professional level when like they're almost at the say tail end of their career, and then the organization either drafts or brings in like a new talent, which is essentially going to be the person to replace them. A lot of those people really struggle with kind of also being that mentor
Mm-hmm.
and allowing these younger athletes to learn from them because they're like, well, like I don't, it's almost the competitor in them where they don't want to give away, I guess, too many of the secrets of the tales because I mean, uh, they're just like you're ultimately going to replace me. But I mean, so I guess how'd you get past that barrier yourself?
Oh man. Well, Lionel started recruiting unreal athletes after my year and the next year, and like I was so excited and so happy. But yeah, as soon as I knew I was going to be out for a year, I was like, these girls are gunning for my spot, and I was like, and I can't even put in the work for a year. Like I just have to focus on being able to walk. So um, definitely like went through my mind for sure. It was a huge worry of mine just because of how amazing the girls coming into this program are. Like we're in a complete rebuild right now, and like Monel's bringing in like the best people for it. Um, the people closest to me when I was going through my surgery will tell you like I was freaking out. I was like, what am I going to do? Like I'm going to be a year behind, and all they're going to do is be training for a year. But when I realized that it's not just about the physical like contribution and like how much volleyball IQ I've like built from playing for, I don't know, 13 years now.
Mhm.
Um, I never saw that as such a like benefit and like such a strength. I was like, people are just going to outjump me when I come back. People are going to outplay me. But I realized like I'm learning how to be a leader and how to be like that neutral person that can calm people down, and I can focus on other people, and I can focus on the game more. And maybe I can't do all the things that they're going to be able to do athletically and physically, but I finally wrapped my head around the other side of volleyball, which is really good, because on the days when your physical is just not there, before I would be so frustrated, and it would be like immediately if I was not feeling good, I know the day was going to go bad or the game was going to go bad. But now like, my body hurts, I can bring myself up in other areas.
Mhm.
So that's what I needed to learn, is that, yeah, these new athletes coming in are definitely unreal volleyball players and athletes, but I have years on them, and that's where I can use my strength, and they're going to be able to do things physically that I can't. And if I mix my volleyball IQ with their physical, like we're going to be an unreal team in the next few years, in my opinion. So that's what I'm excited for, and that's what I definitely had to wrap my head around. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great mindset, right? It's always for the betterment of the team. And I mean, when you think about it too, it's kind of breaks down to the old saying of like work smarter, not harder, right? So if you bring that IQ into the sense where you can essentially just almost cheat the game in a way to make it less physically demanding on your body, that's huge, right? And it was even like I was listening to another podcast with like Cal Ripken Jr., who's like a uh, one of the better shortstops, I'd say, in the history of the MLB, and he was saying how uh, I forget who and what the context was, but basically, a guy was running, decided to steal from first to second, and it was a design like hit and run. So the guy hit a foul ball, and he like slid into second, and umpire told me he had to go back to second. He was like, "Oh man, like that just killed my body for absolutely nothing," right? And then same scenario happened again, and then Cal Ripken looked at him and was like, before he came in, he was like, "Hey, whoever it was," he was like, don't slide, like it's a foul ball again." So he like realized that, and then like realized what Cal was doing, and was like, "Hey, like thanks, man." And then there was also like a little bit. This is more on the side of probably a little bit more of like um, respect for the opponent as well. But it's interesting where it's like if you take away those slides and the dives, and you can positionally get yourself sound and like have like almost a better foundation, you can really save a lot of years off of the body, and you can really do well in terms of just the performance realm of things.
Yeah, totally. Trying to work smarter, not harder is like my mindset this year. Just like, and that's why I like to study opponents more, because it's like you can out physical an opponent, or you can just outsmart them, and they can be a way bigger team and more talented. But my whole attitude is we can outsmart anyone. Like everyone has a hole in the court, like, so yeah.
No, 100%. It's definitely a great strategy. And I mean, you mentioned how excited you are for the future and stuff like that, and the fact that the GGs are in a rebuild. Let's just kind of dive into that, because I know I'm definitely excited to kind of see what the future brings for your program. It's been a tough few seasons, but I guess so. Taking those years and you as a veteran player now, like really. Uh, Taking that into like lessons learned into the future, and yeah, just expectations as a whole in terms of your experience and then the new crowd you have coming in?
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously lost like a lot of players this past year. 4 graduated, and like I mentioned before, like the reason I chose uOttawa was so much because of the girls, and it's now a whole different team. And all of a sudden, I went from still feeling like a first year to now in the oldest. Like there's no 5th years this year, so there's me and 2 other 4th years, and that's it. And it's gonna be weird. It's definitely weird for me. But like I said, Lionel's bringing in unreal athletes and unreal people. Like our team chemistry, I think is going up. Like I think that we're going to be a great group of girls. I'd say from the last few years of obviously like struggling to get some wins in the RCQ. That was the biggest switch, is like when you look at like the history of how well we did. The OUA for us was a strength. That was before my time. But, we did well there. And then trying to adjust to Quebec volleyball has been way harder than I think anyone in the program could have imagined. Like coach included. I think that it's weird. It's a totally different game for the Quebec girls. They have Cégep, and then they're with the same group of girls from like grade 9 to university. The Cégep leads into, one school, and no one really switches. Loyalty there is huge. Everyone stays with one team. So I think we underestimate that because they play a different style than us, and we don't really understand it. And then on top of that, they're all 2 years older, and then they also have been together forever. So for us, we're kind of a step behind just to start. And so I think it's taken a few years to realize that we can't really win with our style. We can create our own, like, how to beat these Quebec teams without having the years and the experience that they have. But I think what we finally realized is we need to play a little bit more like them, and we can't continue like in the OUA way. Because it's so different. Out west is big girls, strong, like different kind of volleyball, quick rallies, and then the OUA has its own different thing that I've never played in. But the RCQ is smart and scrappy, and the balls don't hit the ground ever. The rallies are so long, and so I think it's just taken a few years for us to really adjust to that. But I'm excited because like that's all I've been trying to figure out is how to beat these Quebec teams. And not feel like the underdogs, like I think because we've had a few years of feeling like that. But yeah, I think going into this year, we're just trying to be more confident and not that Ontario team that's just trying to like give them like a run for their money. Like we're trying to finally win some games this year. So yeah.
No, it's exciting, and I mean, fingers crossed if you guys get the result at the end of the season. I think it'll be that much more rewarding for you and those 2 other 4th years because you were there from like the whole kind of like transition from like really adjusting to that RSEQ style of volleyball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely been a tough few years on the mental side of the game, because you've dealt with every sports team. You know how much time we put in here. Like it's a lot. It's our lives. There's a lot of things we miss out on and stuff. But hopefully it pays off in the end. And for me, it pays off no matter what. Like I know it sounds cheesy, but I don't know where I'd be if I wasn't doing volleyball every day. So hopefully it's going to pay off this year for sure because it would be really nice. Yeah.
No, 100%. You guys, everybody, I mean, puts in the hours. It's crazy, right? Like, I mean, in the summer, there's always a group on like the Minto sports complex field. Like everybody's getting their field work in. The high performance center, like the door there should honestly just be revolving because it's constantly people coming and going, right? And I mean, not to mention academics, which is another thing that I wanted to chat with you about because I mean, you got academic All-Canadian on your resume. You wanted to, go into the career of, being a lawyer. So yeah, like tell me about that.
Yeah, so first year for me was a struggle academically, like as it is for a lot of people. So I kind of like got really comfortable with like, okay, maybe this is where I'm at. This is where my grades are at. And then second year, like, I don't know what happened, honestly. I just, yeah, I loved my classes and I finally like got to specialize a little bit more in political science classes versus first year, which was really general. I was like trying everything and I realized I think I just like politics. Like I don't think I should try all these other things. So that was second year for me. I was like just feeling it. Like I was super surprised when they emailed me saying I got academic All-Canadian because I'm also like I don't pay a lot of attention to my grades unless they're really bad. Like I was like if I felt good, I was feeling good. I loved my classes. And then I was like, wow, like, this is really where I want to be. And I considered switching programs after first year. And I was like, you know what? No, like, let me wait it out. Like, I only had one political science class in first year. Like, it wasn't enough to know. And so, yeah, that's kind of what happened there. I plan to do my degree in 5 years from day one. So I'm like another little while away from considering law school. Like, I have to start thinking about it now. Um, and that's been my dream since like grade 8. I wanted to be a lawyer. So, we'll see how that goes. But now I have so much eligibility left that it's crazy. Like, I could play in, like, this year might not count, probably won't count. So I could play another 4 years if I really wanted to, I'm thinking. So, maybe I'll opt more for a master's degree versus law school so that I can keep playing volleyball just because I love the sport. But, we'll see. But that's where I'm at right now, is finally I figured out that politics is like, I really like it actually. And that I just need to stick to that in order to get the grades.
Fair enough. So where, you said grade 8, I guess. So where'd that love for, I guess, being a lawyer, strive from?
Yeah, I always, my parents always kind of mentioned it to me, like, because I was a big arguer. Like, I always talked back, and I always had some smart comment. So obviously that's like, they were like, man, you could be a lawyer. And it was this big joke. And in high school, like, so then when I got to grade 9, we had like a mock trial team. So it was like, we would go to court and do fake trials. And it took, once again, I don't like trying things that are out of my comfort zone. It's like my biggest downfall. So everyone encouraged me to do it. And it took me forever. Like, I don't think I did it in grade 9. I think I started in grade 10. And I was so nervous. Like, the nights before the fake trials, like, I was sick to my stomach. Like, I didn't like public speaking. I was very awkward. But then I realized how much that helped me. Like, I not only loved the law side of it and like doing all that research, and like, it's like creating a performance basically, because it was a fake trial where you could predict it a little bit more. But not only did I like that side of it, I liked how much it made me like out of my comfort zone. And I was finally able to, like, I don't know, I was just less nervous doing presentations in class and all that kind of stuff. And I consider myself pretty like outgoing now, but I think it was mostly because of like being on this like, I swear I was sick thinking about speaking in front of people. So that's where I really fell in love with it, because I was like, not only do I love the law side of it and like the nerd side of it, but I loved like how much it made me like kind of like who I am today, like wanting to be better at speaking to people and less awkward and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. So what type of law do you think you'd go into then?
I think I always wanted to be like a criminal lawyer, like the ones that are all on the TV shows and like glamorized as that. That or like human rights. I'm really into like human rights and international law, and like, something along those lines, and getting out of like the realm of Canadian law, because that's kind of boring to me sometimes. I love like thinking about international like issues and how it affects, like, I just took an international law class in my past third year, and really, really liked it. So kind of leaning towards that, or criminal, like something in criminal law. Yeah.
I had a professor he's in like the comms department, like communications department. And he would always like take his like communications classes and turn them into like law courses, where basically you kind of study it in the sense of like a law class, which was really interesting. So I mean, the course textbook was always just a course pack and like a binder of like law cases, and you would literally just do a deep dive in them. And some of the stuff is really fascinating when you think about it. There was a few cases where it was like, okay, the crime was committed in Canada, but the person who committed the crime was doing it online in the States, but he was also using an internet connection that was like based out of like Australia. Like, who has jurisdiction to really go and like seek justice and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like cool, fascinating realms of it where you can really, I guess, honestly, almost treat it like you would anything else, where it's like you can also like the base foundation is lawyer, but then you can also really tailor it to a lot of like your personal interests as well.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize how, like, obviously I knew there's international law, but I didn't realize how complex it could be with like the differences. And you know, how first world countries treat it versus other countries, but then you overlap and it's like, how do you handle that? Like that was super interesting to me, and I just really took that class last year. So that's kind of like a new interest of mine for sure. But yeah, it's super cool.
No, it honestly sounds interesting. I think I wish there was almost like a little bit more room in some programs to dive into a few other things without having to like really jeopardize, I would say, like the sake of like your schedule sometimes. Because there were so many classes, like even that professor that I mentioned, like I think I had him on my schedule. Like I took a class with him in like second year or first year, and then I tried to have him on my schedule like 4 or 5 more times, and it just never worked out.
Yeah. I know it's so crazy when you hear about people in other programs and how cool their classes are, and you're just like, oh, I wish, like, you know, but you can't do everything. But yeah.
No, you really can't. There's like I love some comms classes, but there's other ones too where it's like, oh, you know what, like it's a little dry. It all depends, right? I think the biggest takeaway I think from like university classes that I kind of do, and like I guess how I practice, which probably isn't the best, but I really honestly just stopped kind of like taking notes and really just paid attention to the overall discussion and like kind of got myself involved in that. And then especially like in classes where they're a little bit more like seminar and like that is kind of the environment. It was really interesting, and especially whether it was a communications class or like an elective, you can really just find out a lot about different realms of everything.
Yeah, that's actually, it's cool that you say that, because for me, like first and second year, we're all like, you know, I didn't want to have class discussions. I didn't want to put my hand up, and I was just note taking, and I was like, this is how I'm going to get the grades. And then third year is a huge switch for at least my program, when you realize like they don't care about your notes, they care about, you know, your participation and how you talk to your classmates and stuff. And now fourth year, I've in so many seminar classes where I'm like, I wish that I had got wrapped my head around that a little bit earlier, and like how that's more important, and like rather than, and like just staring at a PowerPoint taking notes and not even listening to the prof was like my entire first and second year. And like that's, you know, that's the advice I'd give to anyone, is just like listen more, like record, and don't even take the notes, like, because yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how much more you can absorb.
Yeah, and I think so one of my last semesters, like my last semester before everything got like shut down, uh, I had a class and it was with two joint profs, and it was like a recreation and sport class. But he's actually a former football coach with the GG. So Coach Frank, he was the second professor in that class, and I loved it. I think he brought in such like an interesting dynamic to it, and he talked a lot about like active listening and really just like how to have like compelling conversations and stuff. And he actually had a discussion with me like about this podcast before we even really got it up and going, like a few weeks before, right? And just the concept of like really listening and being able to like learn, especially not even just in the classroom, like in everyday life, right? And the people who you're going to have to interact with and chat with, it's like a huge advantage if you really know how to listen. And I think one of the quotes that he said was like somebody who, like, typically the smartest people in the room are the ones who are listening for about 80% of the total conversation.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Like going into this year, like I said before, like I was always so in my own head, but for volleyball and just being on a team, like learning now like how to be a leader and how to be like how to lead us to this comeback is like you really got to focus on everyone else in order to like move forward, you know? And you can play so much more of a role by like helping other people through stuff and like minimizing the impact of your own game and like your own issues and just listening. And it's not easy for me because I'm usually just in my own head, and I'm just like I want to be the best that I can be and contribute the best that I can, and I don't want to let anyone down. But you know, it's definitely a learning curve for me that I'm going into this fourth year for sure. So
No, I'm excited to see how you take that learning curve. I mean, hopefully I can be back in Ottawa soon and watch it live. But if not, I'll always have my laptop and I'll stream the games if
yeah.
I'm not in Ottawa. I think yeah, I th- I really do think it's going to be a great season for you guys. I'm excited to see where the program heads, and that's actually everything that I have for you today and what I wanted to chat about. So now this is actually the part of the podcast where I hand the show over to you. So it's 100% your show. You can talk about whatever you want. Whether it's a life lesson, childhood story, really whatever. Yeah, it's all yours.
Oh wow. I don't know. I don't know. I think like just from our conversation, like what to leave off on is like the university is crazy and you learn something every year, and every year you think that maybe you got a grip and you got a hold of it and you don't and you learn something new. And so I'd say like even just talking with you today made me really realize like because how you brought me through from when I started volleyball to the end is that like every new like you go through something new all the time, and you think maybe your past experiences will help you, but nothing prepared me for taking, now we're at like 9 months off of volleyball. So I don't know, I just maybe I would just leave it off with like a little PSA of being like you never ever know what's gonna, like you're never fully prepared for anything. And that's what people would say is like if someone was to say how my university experience has gone, like I've gotten hit a lot of time. Like first year was super hard. Second year, like it feels like it's always difficult, but then finally, like now I'm coasting a little bit, and it feels nice. And so I'd say, never think that you know everything and what's up and what's gonna happen. I don't know. That's like my biggest takeaway, and also just learn how to have conversations with people and be really outgoing and friendly, because that's what's really important, I think.
No,
Yeah.
I love it. I think that's a great spot to end things off on. Trish, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. It was great catching up. It's definitely been a while. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon and whatnot. But yeah, to everybody listening, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to go check Trish out on social media. She's got a great career still. Still blossoming. Still a lot of stuff in the horizon, and the whole program itself too. But yeah, guys, if you liked it, leave us a review, share it with a friend, and in the meantime, stay best kind.